What's good, everybody? It's the Clown with Cab Show. UFC 284 was iconic. Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, the Great. And really, I didn't get to see the fight live, which I was disappointed in. But I'm hearing a lot of speculations that this fight was really even, that even it could have been a draw. Even it could have went to Alexander. I think both these fighters, looking at it from the stat-wise, from the numbers, yes, I do think it looked like it was even. People even said if Alexander had one more minute, he was going to finish him off. He was ground and pounding Islam at the end. But I just think looking at it from the bigger picture for UFC-wise, it's like these fighters, you have to realize, like, you can't let it go to the decision. You just can't. You can't let your fate and your destiny determined by 3 judges. You just cannot do that. So I think for fighters in the UFC, they should feel like, hey, I have to have that finish. Even if I did dominate this guy, you never know. You just never know. And I've been hearing that Alexander won 2.5 rounds to Islam's rounds. So I think, looking at it, it really could have been a draw. But obviously, I didn't see it live, so I can't really speculate on that. But, looking at the total strikes, we had Alexander threw 164 out of 255 total strikes, to whereas Islam only threw 135 total strikes out of 95 landed. And then significant strikes, 57 landed for Islam out of 95 significant strikes, whereas Alexander the Great threw 70 significant strikes out of 143. So, yes, that's the difference. But I think, like I said, Islam's going to try to take you down. And he tried to take Alexander down 9 times. He was successful 4 times. So, really, it was pretty good defense by Alexander the Great. It really was. But overall, I think that's really what led Islam to the victory, to hold the belt. I really do. Taking him down 4 times, that's a lot. And at the end, we could even say that's a takedown for Alexander, right? At the very end, we saw the last minute, Alexander just beating Islam in, smashing him. Really, and it's one of Khabib's cats. Khabib was not in attendance for Islam, and I think that probably played a factor as well. I think psychologically, just everything building up for Islam, but Islam got the job done. But what should the UFC do next for these 2 fighters? I think they should run it back. Why not, dude? Why not run this back? It was such an even fight. I think it'll be great again if they run it back in the summer, sometime this summer, 2023. Why not? I don't see what the big deal is not doing it. I think doing this rematch would do great things. It would do great numbers. It would do great business. And I think for UFC fans all around the world want this fight. They really do, right? They want to see a rematch. So I think for Islam and Volkanovski, why not run this fight back? And I think for UFC and Dana White, I think we will see this fight. Run it back. Why not? If it's so close, just do it. So I like this. So I think for the UFC, they're continuing to grow, and we see Dana White. And first and foremost, the next card, UFC 285, is going to be great. We got Jon Jones, the GOAT, coming back after a 3-year layoff. He is back, and I can't wait for this. This is next month. We are literally less than 30 days away from the GOAT appearing back in the octagon yet again. And we know Jon Jones, he's beat so many champions right after left, dude. And it's crazy because people always want to bring up terrible things that happened to Jon Jones and all the things that any athlete, it doesn't necessarily have to be the GOAT. It could be any type of athlete who's successful. They'll bring up terrible things of the past, right? And they try to do that with Jon Jones. They try to bring up, the drug addiction. He's cheating. He's using steroids. All this stuff. But at the end of the day, the only person to defeat Jon Jones is himself. So I think him at heavyweight right now, fighting Cyril Gane, I think that's going to be a great fight. I think Gane, he's one of the most technical heavyweights. I think this is going to be a heck of a fight. I think it's going to be one of the hardest fights for Jon Jones. Coming off 3 years, how's Jon Jones going to look like? Is he going to look crispy? Are his shots going to look nice? Are his leg kicks going to be on target? Is the rhythm going to be there? Is the flow? Everything with it, I think it plays in a factor. So I think Jon Jones, the odds are definitely in his favor right now because we've never seen this type of talent for Jon Jones. Really, he's the GOAT of the UFC, in my opinion. Nobody's beat him, dude. It's like he beat champion. When he first saw Shogun, I think this was back in like 2013, somewhere around there, when he made Shogun look like a little kid. And Shogun's a legend, a Hall of Famer. And then he fought Machida. He beat Machida, fought my favorite UFC fighter, Rampage Jackson. He beat him, even though he did some eye pokes and did some sketchy things in that Rampage fight. But looking at it, he beat Rashad Evans, Daniel Cormier. Just the list goes on. Jon Jones is the GOAT. So anybody to say that otherwise, who is strictly UFC, loves the UFC, diehard UFC fan, will have to admit that Jon Jones is the GOAT. I mean, we can't just sit up here and say no, he's not. He is, dude. Like he's never lost in the UFC, man. Yes, he got one disqualification for throwing an illegal elbow, but that was so many years ago and he was dominating that fight. He didn't even need to do that. So yes, technically he has one loss on his record, but looking at it, man, I think this is huge for the UFC. This is huge for Dana White because he understands that we're never going to get a Jon Jones again. Like, we're never going to get that again. We're never going to get the talent that Jon Jones has. I mean, maybe eventually down the line, but I just think right now Jon Jones is that it factor. Some huge fights coming up. We got Israel Adesanya. Hopefully we'll get a rematch with Alex Pereira. I think that'll happen as well later on this year. So many good things. And you know, we got a lot of young cats coming in. We got Leon Edwards fighting, you know, Kamaru Usman again, a rematch. I think that's great. It's just the UFC continues to build its brand. I mean, it's crazy how Dana White brought this company up from really, literally nothing to mega superstar, to ESPN deals, to, you know, everybody's tuning in now. So, and yes, people want to hate on Dana White, but at the end of the day, Dana White chased a dream. He was just a boxing. He was just like a gym trainer type. Like, really, like, he just came up and rose up, dude. So, props to Dana White for chasing a dream, and the American dream is alive and well today, and we see that in Dana White and the UFC. They continue to make history year in and year out. So, shout out to Dana White, but UFC 284 did not, you know, disappoint, even though I didn't know most of the fighters on this card. Overall, you know, the Islam Alexander fight, it was great. It was iconic, and I do think they need to run this fight back. Absolutely. You know, in the UFC, when we see great fights, I mean, there's so many great fights in the past, even back in the early 2000s, you know, even with the great Chuck Iceman Liddell, you know, when he fought Wanderlei Silva, that was one of the greatest UFC fights I've ever seen. That was a 3-round war. It was just, I feel like some of the anticipation is just different back then, right? When Chuck Liddell was around, you know, you had Rampage, you had all these guys who came up, you know, in the early 2000s that paved the way today. Just the anticipation for the fight, for Chuck Liddell fight, dude, you can just feel the energy, dude. Just watching the fight, even today, it's 2023. If you watch some of Chuck Liddell's old fights in the UFC, you're just like, oh my gosh, every throw he would punch was intent to kill you, was intent to knock you out. So it was great, and I think, you know, we have one of the biggest stars, if not the biggest star in the UFC, Conor McGregor. Still, he is coming back to fight. He's coming back to the Ultimate Fighter, you know, back to his roots, and this is great, man. I think this is another great business decision by McGregor, Michael Chandler, and UFC and Dana White to get the Ultimate Fighter going, and I think they're going to do this in June, so we'll see Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor probably in August or September of this year, and that's going to be great. I think the sooner the better. They don't want to delay it all the way to October or November of the end of this year. I just don't like that. I think the sooner the better for McGregor, and we've seen that in McGregor fights. I mean, even watching the McGregor fights, I've been watching McGregor for a very long time now. It's just that kind of the same energy like Chuck Liddell brought. You know, you can just feel it in the crowd, dude. You can just feel it, all the punches, just the anticipation leading up to the fights, dude. Like, people want to see that, man. This is a brutal sport, and I think this is probably one of the most brutal sports there is, you know, in today's society, is the UFC, because you can use your elbows, you can use your knees, you can do so many different things to hurt the individual, intently to hurt them. So it's crazy, and the masses love it, dude, because obviously we're not in there fighting. We're not risking our life getting hit in the face all the time, getting hit in the knees and the ankle, in the shins, everywhere. We're not doing it. So obviously it's easy for me and you to sit up here and say, yeah, you know, they took a weak punch, whatever, but it's a tough sport, dude. It really is. So I applaud all the UFC fighters, not just the UFC boxing, just all the fight game, kickboxing, just so many different fighting programs where it's just like, man, these guys are really brave for what they do. You know, they're risking their lives, their health on here in the octagon, which is crazy. But I think that's why McGregor's one of the biggest UFC stars. Not just because of his mouth, you know, made him big fights. Absolutely. You know, we saw him even going to crossover to fight Mayweather. But I think for McGregor, what made McGregor so big and just so famous, from all the way back to where he came from collecting food stamps to being broke broke, sitting on a couch, dude, being a plumber, to all of a sudden, hey, 10 years later, now I'm the biggest superstar, not just in the UFC, but in the world. Like, everybody knows McGregor, dude. So I think for McGregor, it's really a humbling experience this year to fight Michael Chandler, to go back on the Ultimate Fighter and say, hey, let's look in the mirror. What got me here? What got me out of being a plumber, collecting welfare checks in Ireland to being a mega superstar? What got me there? And that was the hunger, the passion of the fight game. So I think Michael Chandler, we've seen Michael Chandler, and he really hasn't been in the UFC for a long time, but shout out to Michael Chandler for getting this fight going. And I think every fight that Michael Chandler has fought has brought that same energy, just back like from the early 2000s. Like, just that same energy. Like, he's just a warrior. He loves a battle. He wants to just go to war with you. He wants to go toe-to-toe. He wants to throw heavy shots every single throw. And we've seen that Michael Chandler when he fought Justin Gaethje. And I was thinking, dude, every fight was intent to knock you out. And even the Michael Chandler-Dustin Poirier. And I think if Michael Chandler just had a little bit better, crispier shots, better jabs, more precision, he would have knocked that Dustin Poirier out in the first round. He had him hurt, dude. And Dustin Poirier even came out and said, look, if he would just throw a little bit better, I would have been knocked out. I would have been done. He even admitted that, after he choked him out. So I think for Michael Chandler, he's a showman. He is that guy. And I think that's why he got the McGregor fight. And I think McGregor applauds that, looks at that and says, hey, we're going to do great numbers here. I think in this fight, it might do better numbers than the Poirier fight, a year and a half ago when he fought McGregor, when McGregor broke his leg at the end of the first round. It was just like, oh my gosh. And everybody was writing McGregor off. I didn't think he was done yet. But is McGregor past his prime? Absolutely. He's past his prime. I think, the hunger obviously is not there. Why would it? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not fighting anymore to pay bills. You're not fighting to pay your mortgage, dude. Like, he's a multi-millionaire. Almost a billionaire probably at this point, from Proper 12 and everything, all the endorsements. It's like, McGregor doesn't have to fight in the UFC anymore. He didn't have to fight after the Mayweather fight. To be honest with you, like, he could have just said, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to fight Khabib, but he did, and I think it's the love, the passion of it, and that's why McGregor's coming back. And it's kind of interesting to see McGregor's transform into this, right? He's a lot overweight right now, but I think right now he's kind of in the second phase of his career in the UFC, and I think, a couple more years, I do think McGregor's going to be out of the UFC. I really do, and I'm surprised he still lasted this long. I really do, from all the money he's made. It's like he made max value, so why even try to risk your life and stuff, Why risk your health at this point if you're McGregor? But it goes to show us that Conor McGregor is a real fighter, and that's why he's a real superstar, because he's a real fighter. He's not a fake fighter. He's not one of these internet cats. Like, he's a real legit fighter, and that's why people love him, especially in Ireland, dude. People love McGregor and all fight fans around the UFC, so I think that's why, we're going to see a big year in 2023 for the UFC this year. We really are. So I cannot wait. Like I said, I can't wait for the next UFC 285 in less than a month from now. We're going to see the GOAT, Jon Jones, once again. I can't wait. And the crazy thing is with Jon Jones is, what are they going to say next? And once Jon Jones becomes the heavyweight champion of the world, what's the next? What are they going to say now? You know what I'm saying? Like, he swept through the light heavyweight division for years, beat so many champions for years, and now all the way up to this point, what if he just sweeps through the heavyweight division? It should be called Jon Jones, the light heavyweight and heavyweight division. Like, that is crazy. That's the top notch. These are the big dogs here. The heavyweights. This is the top notch, man. This is the heavyweight. Heavy freaking weight, dude. And Jon Jones is in it, man. He looks like he's 260 just built, man. And it looks like Jon Jones is hungry. It really does. So I cannot wait. I think this is huge. This is absolutely huge. But as far as UFC 284 goes, what a fight, for Islam and Alexander. I do think they need to run it back. They absolutely do, for fight fans who want this fight again. And I think for Alexander the Great, I think, maybe he might even feel like he got cheated in a way, because after the fight, he kind of was just like, really? They're going to give it to a unanimous decision victory for me, dude? It was just crazy. But I think the difference was Alexander didn't really take him down. He's 0 for 4 on takedowns except at the very end. But I think for Alexander, if you're going to get this rematch like you want to right now for Islam, it's like you're going to have to, pull some other stuff out. You cannot let him take you down no matter what. Out of 9 takedowns, it should have been 0 instead of 4. And now if Islam runs this fight back again, what if he tries to take you down 20 times? How many times is he going to get you down? Eventually, he's going to try to get you down. But shout out to Alexander, man. I think, this fight, he's still a champion. Both these guys are probably still in pound for pound number 1, pound for pound number 2. So I think they're going to run it back. But I cannot wait this year for the UFC. Some great freaking fights. I cannot wait. It's the Clown with Cam show. Let's go!